It sounds like behind the scenes that the White House is possibly looking for a replacement for Pete Hegseth, who's the Secretary of Defense. Why would they be doing that? Well, let's get into what happened over the weekend. Apparently, there was another Signal group chat leak from Pete Hegseth, this time to his family members. That's one part of it. And then another part of this has to do with Iran. Let's get into the Signal chat first, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, it happened again, fam. It happened again.
Multiple sources tell CNN Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth revealed attack plans for airstrikes on Houthi rebels in Yemen in another Signal chat. This one included his wife, brother, and personal attorney. Now, this second Signal chat is in addition to the one Hegseth used to communicate about military plans with cabinet officials last month that is now under investigation by the Defense Department's acting inspector general. I want to go straight to CNN's Kevin Liptak, who was at the White House, for more on this. Kevin, what are we learning about this?
Yeah, and if this all sounds sort of reminiscent of that scandal that engulfed the administration about a month ago, it should, because the Secretary of Defense, we are now learning, shared very similar details about the U.S. attack plans on the Houthi rebels in Yemen on a second Signal group. And we understand that this included things like takeoff times for some of those fighter jets as they were preparing to strike those targets in Yemen. The big difference here is who comprised each of these Signal groups, because remember that first time around, that group was created by the National Security Advisor, Mike Waltz. It was intended to coordinate this attack with members of the cabinet officials who were in top national security positions in the administration, and he inadvertently included the journalist Jeffrey Goldberg. This new Signal group that we are just learning about this evening included some members of Pete Hegseth's inner circle who are, it's not clear what reason they would have to have this information about the strikes that the U.S. was planning to carry out. It included his brother and his personal attorney. They both work at the Pentagon. It's not clear whether they have security clearances. It also included his wife, Jennifer, who has accompanied him previously in meetings with other foreign officials, which has raised some eyebrows among certain officials at the Pentagon. Now, as you mentioned, that original Signal sort of snafu is now being investigated by the Inspector General at the Pentagon. It's not clear whether this latest revelation will be included in the review. The Pentagon officially has not commented on these latest revelations, which I should note were first reported by the New York Times. But this does punctuate a period of chaos inside the Pentagon and inside the inner circle.
It shows a pattern. It shows a pattern of behavior. Like one time, like, whoops, that was an accident, or woo, we don't know how that happened. Twice, it shows a pattern of behavior. I told you guys this before about Signal. Signal is not all of these message chat groups, which I've been a part of before. WhatsApp, Signal. I think there's another one. Is WeChat still around? They're not as safe as people would think, right? There have been times where I'm like, how did someone find me on Signal, right? Like there are times when I used to use it, I don't use it anymore, where I would get a notification that says so-and-so is on Signal. I'm like, okay, do they want me to know that? Did that person want me to know that they joined Signal? Like, why are you announcing this to me? You know, just things like that. So it's not safe. Obviously, we are talking about foreign policy information here that they are saying that certain people were not supposed to see, and they did see it. But I also feel like this issue isn't the only issue as to why they could be looking to remove Pete Hegseth. And we'll get to that other one in just a second. They already fired one of his staff members because of how they felt about Iran and these wars. And we'll show you that clip as well. I just don't think that this is the only reason, because Trump came forward recently, made a statement, and he said that he supports Pete Hegseth and that he wasn't critical of what happened here. At least publicly, Donald Trump was not critical of what Pete Hegseth did here. I don't think this is the reason. It could be what they're using as their reason. Now, obviously, that information should be secure. It should not be getting out to other people, but here we are. But I also think it's convenient for them to use this reason and not the other one, which I'm going to get to. Let's continue.
Of Pete Hegseth. You'll remember just last week, senior officials who were in sort of his front office at the Pentagon were fired essentially for what officials described as a leak investigation. And this is all sort of drawing questions, including from some loyalists, some allies of Pete Hegseth, at how this chaos has been allowed to perpetuate. We just heard from John Ulyat, who until recently was Pete Hegseth's press secretary at the Pentagon. He says that it's been a month of total chaos at the Pentagon, from leaks of sensitive operational plans to mass firings. The dysfunction is now a major distraction for the president, who deserves better from his senior leadership. Ulyat goes on to say, even strong backers of the secretary, like me, must admit the last month has been a full-blown meltdown at the Pentagon, and it's becoming a real problem for the administration.
For the administration, it makes it look like you don't know what you're doing, right? And this speaks to the other issue that people had in the very beginning when Donald Trump selected Pete Hegseth. People were like, this dude is not qualified for this position, but people went ahead and voted for him anyway. So just keep this in mind. It's not like some of the same people who were criticizing that pick that Donald Trump had of Pete Hegseth, they still voted for him when it was time to decide whether or not he should have that position. So just keep that in mind. But it points to that. Like right now, people are saying, especially online, people are saying like, oh, we told you he wasn't qualified. People are saying, oh, guess it's back to Fox News. People are saying things like, did he have a couple of drinks? All those types of things. But it points to that. It shows that, oh boy, you have made a lot. It's only April. It's only April. Too much has happened too soon.
Part of the problem, of course, is that this is not sort of a quiet period for national security. You have Pete Hegseth making sort of preparations on the president's command, these designs on the Panama Canal. He was just there visiting earlier this month. You also have this buildup of U.S. assets in the Middle East in preparation for a potential Israeli strike on Iran. You also have tensions in Asia. So this is a fraught period for the Pentagon to be undergoing, this period of chaos. And certainly, I think now you'll hear from officials who are questioning whether Pete Hegseth is sort of the man for the job at this very fraught moment. I should also note that when those original war plans, attack plans were shared in the Signal group, the administration and the White House and President Trump denied that there was anything classified contained in that information. Of course, that drew a lot of skepticism from almost every national security analyst that we talked to, Jessica.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. It's not looking good for Pete, guys. Pete, it's not looking good for you. Not looking good at all. But there's more. We have to show you something else as well, because people need to see this. Pete Hegseth, one of his staff members, and we talked about this before, that he was removed, he was fired. His name is Dan Caldwell. Dan Caldwell was one of the strong, this is Tucker Carlson here. Dan Caldwell was one of the strongest voices at the Pentagon opposing war with Iran. Then he was falsely accused of leaking classified documents and fired. So let's get to this part here. Dan Caldwell, and listen to what he said to Tucker Carlson about Iran.
And you feel it. You feel it. And it I'm not involved at all. I'm just watching. But it seems like the fastest way to derail the whole project, the Trump administration and the United States of America, is a war with Iran. And that's why I've just been watching it as carefully as I can, because I feel like, again, if you hated Donald Trump and you hated what the administration is doing on immigration, trade, anti-wokeness, whatever, and you wanted to stop it, the first thing you would do is apply pressure to have the U.S. military engage in a war with Iran. I mean, that's my perspective on it anyway.
I think that, and also continuing to do what we've been doing previously in Russia, Ukraine.
For sure. Though I don't know why. Well, I'm going to ask you all about this, but it feels like Witkoff is helping a lot there. God bless.
I mean, I've already said he's a godsend.
God bless Steve Witkoff. I couldn't agree more. As a man and as an instrument of peace and a figure now out of history. Okay, so you did make, just from an outsider's perspective, one maybe career mistake by giving on-the-record interviews before you went in, describing your foreign policy views, which I think are fully within the mainstream of the world in the U.S., but out of the mainstream among, warmongers in Washington. So, like, people knew that you weren't fully on board with the regime change program. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I was very open about it. I was very on the record about it. And most of the time when I was saying that we shouldn't do this, it was actually in support of, the president's stated preferences. Like, the president clearly doesn't want this. In the first term, there were people in his administration that wanted it. He clearly didn't want it. And so it was supporting people who didn't want the war. And so I was essentially...
But Donald Trump has said, and now his actions make perfectly clear, he would strongly prefer a diplomatic solution.
Correct. I don't want to speak for the president, but it's fairly obvious that that's what he wants.
Well, he said it. I mean, He said it again, and he ran on it. So it's not a crazy position. And now things are getting so bonkers in this country that saying that makes you a bigot or something, a Nazi. I'm just going to ignore all that. And I just want to get back to your experience. So I'm just watching this from the outside, and I'm thinking, having spent my life in D.C., I was like, Dan Caldwell's got a target on his back that I don't know if he knows that.
Yeah.
If you look at Dan Caldwell in this interview, he looks a little bit afraid. Like, I noticed that, like, he looks maybe he's just a little nervous, but he looks a little bit like afraid, a little bit timid here.
And then I read all of a sudden that you're a traitor. You're like marched out of the Pentagon for leaking, right? And then the whispering campaign, the character assassination campaign begins, and here's its outline. I don't want to upset you. You may not even be aware of this. Dan Caldwell leaked classified information to liberal media outlets, to the media, to NBC News, for example. So I just want to be totally direct with you. Did you leak classified information against the wishes of your superiors to media outlets?
Absolutely not.
Did you photograph classified material and then text pictures of that material to an NBC News reporter?
Absolutely not. And I have not spoken to an NBC reporter while at the Pentagon.
Very interesting there, folks. So I noticed the way that he framed that, against the will or the wishes of your superior. So which would have been Pete Hegseth at that point in time. Again, remember, Dan's no longer there. So some people believe also that it's not just the signal leaks. It's also that Pete Hegseth and, of course, Dan Caldwell do not want this war with Iran. And they feel that's why there seems to have been some type of a target. We don't know. It could be a mixture of both, right? It could be. But you will see now that they are looking for other options. So, Pete was kind of doomed going in anyway. Even some of the people who supported Trump said they don't want Pete Hegseth in that position. And now you see the White House is possibly looking for him to exit. Exclusive, the White House is looking to replace Pete Hegseth as defense secretary. So Pete is not having a good year. Can you say that, folks? In 2025, Pete Hegseth is not having a good year. No. Notice they're not going after everybody, right? They're not trying to get rid of Tulsi Gabbard, right? Remember, she was on that Signal group chat, the first one. She was confronted about it. She had to appear and testify in a hearing about it. But notice you don't hear them trying to get rid of her. So I don't think it's just the Signal chat. I think it's a combination of things. But they're looking to boot the Pete. The White House has begun the process of looking for a new leader at the Pentagon to replace Pete Hegseth. This is according to U.S. official who has not authorized to speak was not authorized to speak publicly. This comes as Hegseth is again mirrored in controversy over sharing military operational details in a group chat. The defense secretary is under fire after revelations that he shared classified information in a group chat with his wife, brother, lawyer, according to official. The source said Hegseth used Signal messaging app on his personal smartphone, detailing minute-by-minute classified information about airstrikes on Houthi targets in Yemen. It happened at about the same time in March that Hegseth shared similar details with top White House officials in a different Signal chat group. So ask yourself this question. If it happened around the same time, why are we just now hearing about it now? I want people to learn to ask questions on this show. If it happened around the same time, why didn't we hear about it at the same time the first Signal chat leak was reported? Why are we just hearing about it now? So ask yourself that question. Let that sink in for a second. It goes on to go here. His further confirmation, or actually a different one from Caroline. White House Press Secretary Caroline denied that there's an effort to replace Hegseth, posting on X that President Trump strongly stands behind him. Speaking to reporters at the White House, Trump backed Hegseth and said concerns over the Signal chat are a waste of time. He's doing a great job. Ask the Houthis how he's doing. Hegseth had denied wrongdoing at a White House Easter event earlier Monday. This is what the media does. They take anonymous sources from disgruntled former employees, and then they try to slash and burn people, ruin their reputation. It's not going to work with me, he said. He was likely referring to 4 senior advisors who left the Pentagon abruptly last week. 3 other Pentagon advisors, Dan Caldwell, who we just heard from, Colin Carroll, and Darren Selnick, were escorted out of the Pentagon and accused of leaking information to the press. The trio then put out a joint statement on X, calling their dismissal unconscionable and saying that they have not even been told what they stand accused of leaking. So as you can see, folks, like, this is a mess. I don't know. This is an absolute mess here. It does look like there could be possibilities that they may be looking for someone else. Again, what people say publicly and what they say privately can be 2 different things. And a lot of times publicly, you don't want people to know that there could be trouble or like there's turmoil, especially if the administration just started. I mean, it's only April, but you all know from Trump's first term, he's not immune to firing people. He's not immune to firing people. He's fired people from his own administration before and said, okay, you got to get out of here. We're placing you with someone else. But I want you to ask again what matters most, because this is the part of the story I think that people oftentimes are not bringing up. People are talking about the Signal chat leaks, and they're talking about, obviously the issues that people may have with Pete Hegseth. But I think what matters most is the fact that in these chats, they were basically given the go-ahead to kill people in a building to get one person who may or may not have been there. I want to say it again. What matters most is that they were planning and did pursue it to kill civilians, all of these civilians in a building to get one person. And I don't want that to be lost. Do not lose that with this story. That's the important piece, that our government, once again, was committing war crimes. This is exactly what Julian Assange was talking about. The goal isn't to win. It's just to continue a forever war, to continue to launder money. And also they openly kill civilians. It's not just under Trump administration. It happened under Obama too. That's why they wanted to silence Julian Assange. That's really what matters most, folks. That they're openly fine killing civilians. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.